Hello and welcome to the Untitled Anarchist Seagull channel, where I'm your host, Untitled Anarchist Seagull by the name of Elise, and we're about to find out who's going to deliver the keynote speech at the Last JabroniCon. And I think there's one we've just we owe it to ourselves to see this, because it will answer a question we've all wondered about. Dennis Prager is going to explain to us why millennials support communism. See, I got ideas. I think maybe it's something to do with how economically all of the gains the working class had made in the middle of the 20th century have steadily eroded over the lifetimes of basically everyone who was born after about 1970. I think that might be something to do with realizing that it's actually Mug's game and that we need to get out of it, especially because it's wrecking the fucking planet. I bet he's gonna do this question much more justice than I have. So we're gonna find out, chat, why millennials support communism.
Hello, everybody. I'm Dennis Prager. This is my home, my fire, and my dog.
Yeah, once again, his dog is looking away from the camera. I understand that. If I were in the room with him as he was shooting one of these things, I reckon I'd be looking away from the camera too, possibly holding something in front of my face. Dennis studied communist affairs. Hey, let me see. Millennials approving of communism. What the hell is communist affairs? Like, is that what Krupskaya got up to when Lenin was away?
That's pretty much it. My home, my fire, my dog. It's the fireside chat. I have this with you every week.
You're in the middle of a fucking heat wave, and you're keeping up this conceit. I mean, top marks for commitment, admittedly. But, like, aren't you burning up?
It's a chance to have this utterly 100% unscripted. There's no what do you call it, teleprompter. I'm not reading from anything. I am just, as it were, sharing thoughts about life with you.
Such as they are.
So thanks for watching, and thank you for all the love letters to Otto. There are now people who stop.
I don't want to know what fucking right-wingers are sending in love letters to his dog.
Me at the airport and just go say hi to Otto or give Otto a rub. I feel like Otto's companion, or I work for Otto.
Well, admittedly, he has the better screen presence, and he said 100% fewer absurd reactionary piles of shit.
Which is fine with me. That's not an issue. Anyway,
well, we're glad we cleared that up.
The thing that I do give some thought to right before I do this each week is, what will I open up with regard to? What will I talk about in the beginning?
And it's always your fucking dog. I mean, so I don't know why you're thinking about it. Are you just sick of talking about your dog? Because it seems like you're actually not.
So,
Hello, Erica, how you doing? Yes, he's going to tell us about why millennials support communism. I've always wondered, haven't you?
Things trigger it. Some things are things I've been thinking about and just want to share with you, but this one is one I just read. 36% of millennials approve of communism. That was the headline.
That's such a weird way of phrasing it, approve of it. Like, there's communism going on, and 36% of millennials go and check it out, and they're like, okay, based? How's that work?
On Market Watch, some poll was taken.
Well, we don't have to wonder any longer, because, I mean, I had my own thoughts about why it might be that people born after 1970 might not be particularly afraid of, in fact, be rather favorably disposed towards communism. But I don't have a fake university, I only have a fake Seagull channel. So I think I'm going to defer to the guy with the fake university.
So over a third of millennials, it's something I need to address, because the issue is, that's bad enough, but the issue is larger than that. How is that possible?
Well, I think it's probably because capitalism kind of sucks shit, and we're just seeing society fall apart in real time. And absolutely not a single one of the survival level disasters that we're facing gets serious. It's like they talk about it for 5 minutes, say, "Oh, okay, only chumps, only weird communist people actually care about whether people get COVID or whether there's a habitable planet for us." Or something like that, and then they just sort of go and subsidize more fossil fuel companies. I think that might be why people are approving of communism, because they're getting a really good look at capitalism, and it sucks.
That's the question to be asked. In light of that, again, I want to always mention related PragerU videos. I did a video titled "Why Isn't communism as hated as Nazism?"
Yeah, and I wouldn't be bragging about that if I'd done that. That's the sort of thing I would have put on private.
It's of course they're all 5 minutes, and I strongly recommend that to you. My field of study, I'm not sure I've ever mentioned this, but I might have.
Wait, that was the entire section?
My field of study was a fairly rare arena to specialize in. My field was communist affairs. That's what it was called, communist affairs.
Yeah, that's like, for example, what Krupskaya got up to when Lenin was away.
It was the heyday of the Cold War, and
Oh, this is how he ended up in this bullshit job. He had to create this because he'd studied Sovietology, and then there was no Soviet to ologize about.
I did that at the School of...
Yes, I did. I did hear that. I saw it was the headline of a Sam Cedar video that was recommended. I haven't watched it because I don't know that I could bear it. But yeah, I mean, this gets to, there was that weird guy who kept on showing up in chat, and at one point he's like, "Well, why do you spend so much time on these right-wing chuds that nobody cares about?" It's like, because they're funded by billionaires, and actually a huge and actually really concerning amount of their propaganda is just used uncritically in the fucking schools.
International Affairs at Columbia University, and I was at what's called the Russian Institute. They had an East Asian Institute, an African Institute,
Hello,
a Middle East
Satine,
Institute, a Russian Institute, probably something.
We're learning why millennials approve of communism from a guy with a fake university who once studied Sovietology.
Else. I was at both the Russian and Middle East Institutes because I did Arabic and Russian. I already had known Hebrew. So I specialized in communist affairs, and I was sure when the Cold War ended that...
I mean, I wouldn't mind. I would be totally up for like an affair with communists.
I remember thinking, whoa, am I lucky I didn't go into that field? That won't be relevant anymore. I couldn't even get a job. But it turns out to have been the most important thing I could have studied, in fact.
Yes, because if he'd studied a field with a future, he might not have set up his fake university funded by oil money.
Outside of religion,
Phoenix,
which I've been studying my whole life. Because to understand the left and to understand communism is to
No, he's going to understand the left for us. He's going to go and understand us. He really digs us.
Understand the modern world. It is beyond belief that 36% of millennials approve of communism.
Are we going to get to an explanation of why? I mean, are you just going to moan about it? For this is a 32-minute video.
It shows you how bad our education system is from elementary school on.
Yeah, because if there's one thing that U.S. education does not do, it's tell you how horrible everything to do with communism is, like more than once every 5 or 6 minutes.
To graduate college or to graduate high school and not know how evil communism has been is as if, well, maybe they don't even know. It's like not.
Maybe it's just that we graduate from your schools and we don't believe a word of it because so much of the history class is bullshit anyway. And somehow we never get to hear about what a horrifying fucking society we're living in.
No.
I mean, I was lucky there. I had a couple of teachers who actually did spend some time on what a horrifying society we were living in. Like, one of them showed me Matewan in class, showed us Matewan in class, which remains one of my absolute favorite movies.
I mean, how evil Nazism has been. I mean, can you imagine if there were a poll, 36% of millennials have a favorable view of Nazism?
Well, you'd be celebrating, Dennis. I mean, you shouldn't be, but you would be.
You would either assume one of two things, right? You would either assume that a third of millennials are evil.
Or maybe it could possibly be that there are billionaire-funded propaganda outlets that never miss an opportunity to equate communism to Nazism, which actually is a way of making Nazism sound kind of good.
Or a third of millennials are utterly ignorant. Right? Is there any other possibility?
Well, yes, it could very well be that. I would be really shocked if 36% of millennials actually spent any time, had any grounding in any kind of communist theory. Even, I'd be surprised if that many had actually even just, like, read the Communist Manifesto or something. But, I mean, it could very well be that people have seen enough of the ideas that it sounds better than what they're living through. Like, can you really be too shocked, Dennis, that people who can go and get advanced degrees end up owing 60, 70 grand plus the interest, which never stops accumulating, not be able to get to discharge it in bankruptcy thanks to Joe Biden amongst other people, and not be able to find a decent job in our field? You think that maybe that would lead people to think that maybe this economic system isn't great?
If a third of millennials or a third of any group thought favorably of Nazism?
Oh, yeah.
You know, I wonder, which I often...
Are you gonna actually, like, when you ask a question in the title of a video, Dennis, people kind of expect you to answer it sometime in the video.
I wonder, what do you learn in high school and college?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I think we all know. I think most, if not all of us chat here, went to high school, possibly university as well, in the United States. And of course, we all get the communism class, right? I mean, there's that whole cycle of classes we get starting in about 8th grade, explaining historical and dialectical materialism. Obviously, we're just being told in schools that communism is great, and that's where we're getting it. It's not that we're just using critical thinking and coming to it on our own.
I guess the answer is leftism.
That's not an answer. That's just a way to rephrase the question.
How bad America is, how racist America is.
So what you're saying is people naturally gravitate towards an alternative when they hear how much this country sucks.
And all the related things. You learn a tremendous amount about climate change, I'm sure.
Yeah, he disapproves. You can tell he disapproves of learning about climate change. You'd almost think that he was getting paid out of oil money.
But the really important stuff, the good and evil stuff, which that's to me, that and history are the most important things.
Wait, okay, so you're thinking that talking about racism in school, racism isn't the good and evil stuff? That's what he just said. There's racism and climate change and how, like, a handful of billionaires are more or less catapulting us towards an uninhabitable planet within the next couple of centuries, if we're lucky and things don't accelerate even faster. But that's not the good and evil stuff. The good and evil stuff is how official enemies of the United States are
you could
bad.
ever study. What has happened and what is good and what is bad. There's nothing more
Well, yeah, but you just said you didn't want people to hear about what has happened because it makes them dislike the United States and look for alternatives.
important. I've always been preoccupied with good and evil. That's why I did communist affairs.
Okay, so as a guy who's preoccupied with good and evil, what side do you think you're on right now as you're taking oil money to lie to people?
That's why that was my field of study, because it was so obvious to me that anything that deprives billions of people of the elementary right to speech, to expression, to religion.
Okay, so you're describing Christianity so far.
Which engaged in the greatest genocides in human history.
Okay, we're still on Christianity. When are you going to get to communism?
It's pretty important to learn about that. I mean, I'm looking.
Well, you did say that they were learning about the U.S. They're kind of responsible for some of the greatest genocides. I mean, wiping out most of the indigenous people north of the Rio Bravo. You don't think that warrants a pride of place on the Genocide League table, Denny?
Looking at you, and I'm asking you, at any age, whether you're a millennial or not, do you have any idea how many people Mao killed in China?
Do you have any idea how many people the United States has killed so far on the planet?
How many people Stalin killed in the Soviet Union, which was Russia, and the
Well, he's explained. This is how you know that he actually did, in fact, study communist affairs. He knows that the Soviet Union used to, when it existed, it included Russia.
Republics it owned. How many people? Pol Pot's, Khmer Rouge, Red Cambodians.
And who was it who kicked out Pol Pot's Khmer Rouge? Who was it who put a stop to that again? And who was it who was actually sending him weapons and giving him diplomatic support?
Killed. Almost a third of Cambodians were massacred by the communist regime there. Every communist regime massacres and deprives people of any dignity. There's no dignity when you can't speak freely. That's when you are rendered that is.
You mean sort of like, I don't know, when you've got, say, a governor who's banning just about every worthwhile book out of school libraries in Florida, for example, and wants to make it actionable libel to even suggest that somebody is racist. Libel per se, so there's no defense against it.
That is worse. I do believe that is worse than physical bondage.
Wait, you think that slaves had freedom of speech? Is that what he just said? So depriving people of freedom of speech, that's what he said, is worse than slavery. So he assumes that, during slavery, enslaved people got to just express their opinions freely.
If you said to me, I could live...
Oh, well, A, because they like to drape themselves in red things, and B, because there is very little good to say about them, and the U.S. was very, very briefly opposed to them. But yeah, I mean, that you could make a pretty strong argument that Pol Pot's entire ideology, which did include quite a bit of racial supremacy in there, probably would actually move it in the direction of fascist, and then it would be a little bit less surprising that the U.S. was arming them and providing them diplomatic support and condemning Vietnam for putting a stop to all that.
I could live in my home and have my meals and so on, but I could not say whatever was on my mind. Or I could say what is on my mind, but I would be in bondage to some master.
I was trying to take him ad absurdum there when I said that he thinks that you have free speech when you're a slave, but he literally thinks this.
I would take the latter. That, by the way, is the famous American phrase. I think it's on one of the license plates in some American state.
Yeah, New Hampshire.
Give me liberty or give me death. Actually, that's Patrick Henry. It's live free or die. That's on one of the
Yeah, which is kind of fucking dark.
license plates. I don't remember which state. I think Vermont or New Hampshire, which is somewhat ironic. Isn't Bernie Sanders from Vermont?
This is how you can tell he did not actually prepare
guy
this.
who honeymooned in the
not lying
Soviet
about
Union. It's hard to believe he has a license plate on his car, live free or die.
Wrong fucking state.
One of life's ironies, if that's the case. If I'm right about the license plate.
You're not.
You know how many people we're talking about? You know, I mean,
Yeah.
you have a moral obligation. I believe we owe those who were massacred one
All of them, Dennis?
thing. We can't undo their suffering, but we can at least give them the dignity of knowing what they went through.
All of them, Dennis?
I believe everybody needs to read about the Holocaust. I think what the Nazis did. I think everybody needs to read about what Stalin did. Just one book. What Mao did, what Pol Pot did.
Like, I mean, what, all of the things that they did, or just, like, your preferred one or two of the things that they did?
I went to Cambodia a few.
Like, how do these people who seem to think, like, that the only thing that anyone who calls themselves communists ever do is just come to power and murder a bunch of people, and that's just it? How do they think they have any support? How do you think that they maintained any support for any length of time after coming to power? Probably it was because they did some other stuff too.
Few years ago, and I made it my business to visit what's called.
Yeah, well, yes, none of them were communists, but for these purposes, he's defining communism as anything that the U.S. doesn't like, that, I don't know, includes a right to healthcare, more or less. We're already just abandoning any attempt to define these things when we go into the universe that this guy is in.
The killing fields.
Because, of course, I wonder if whatever poll this is that he claims to be citing with the 36% of millennials who approve of communism, did they get into details? Like, were they talking about anarcho-communism? Were they talking about, like, Bordigan, left communism? Did they ask him, do you prefer the Fourth International, the Third International? Which international is your international? Yeah, I don't think so. In which case, it is just wild to pretend that these 36% of millennials supposedly are all Marxist-Leninists? Or Maoists? Or, like, Khmer Rougists? I don't know if he ever... I think Pol Pot more or less considered himself to be a tendency unto himself.
Where the communists of Cambodia massacred their own citizens. These are auto-genocides, by the way. This is the interesting thing.
That's always so interesting when... This is a common maneuver in the U.S. This was a big thing back when the U.S. was planning to do more genocide in Iraq, do it more directly, since it was getting boring just starving people to death remotely. And it was like, he used chemical weapons against his own people. And it's like, does that... I mean, we used them against other people's people. Is that somehow better? Is it better when you do that shit to other people's people?
These are genocides against your own people. Mao did it against Chinese. It's between 60 and 80 million people. Now remember, you have to realize something about the suffering. Let's take the lower number, 60 million. So for every one of those, think of think of the ripple effect. The number of people who have suffered because that person died.
What's interesting is the last time we watched him, he was using a very carefully selected quote from Deuteronomy to tell black people they should just get over slavery and shouldn't feel bad about it, shouldn't be at all pissed off about it, shouldn't acknowledge that there's any kind of after effects that it has any effect on the present or whatever. And here he is talking about the sort of like atrocities by official enemies, real, imagined, and completely and utterly distorted beyond all plausibility. And now all of a sudden we're supposed to be talking about generational trauma, apparently. You get to acknowledge generational trauma when it's people the U.S. doesn't like.
It's an astonishing number the amount of suffering induced for no good reason. Do you know why Mao starved 60 million people to death? So that he could send all of the food to the Soviet Union.
No. Depending on which famine we're talking about, the main one was mostly because somebody had the brilliant idea that you could improve crop yields if these damn sparrows weren't constantly eating this stuff. And so they had this great idea of let's kill all the sparrows. Oh, wait a second. It turns out the sparrows were also eating locusts and now we're fucked.
In return for weapons, so that he could make China into a military power. The death of all those people was completely irrelevant. And
I would love to see somebody do like the fucking COVID body count, holding the U.S. to the same sorts of standards that this is. Where, we'll leave aside, even more honest accounts of these things that will at least acknowledge that incompetence actually did play kind of a role in a lot of this stuff in various ways. That it was, as opposed to just kind of just making shit up completely out of whole cloth. But just the way that intent is just assumed about every single thing, every single consequence, whether it was a direct consequence, whether it was an indirect consequence, whether it was predictable from the start, whether it really wasn't, is immediately taken to be within the scope of the intent when it's an official enemy. When it's us, first of all, you don't even get to actually hear how many people died. And when I say it's us, in this case, I'm talking about, it turns out the CDC, you may have seen the article in the New York Times talking about, wow, we've hit a milestone, the excess deaths, which are the last halfway reliable metric we have, for determining the COVID body count, have gone way down. And it was celebrated in the New York Times. And if you go to the CDC's excess death dashboard, what you find is actually, because they openly admit it. It's in the fine print, but it's there. Say actually, what happened is we changed how we calculated this, and it turns out they were changing how they calculated it every fucking year. At no point have they been actually giving us proper figures on this, which would mean comparing it to projections before the pandemic, so not including any pandemic deaths, looking at what a normal, hypothetical 2021, 22, 23 would be, based on, statistical projections developed without any kind of pandemic going on. And it turns out they were never doing that. They were adding pandemic deaths into the baseline every single year in order to keep the number artificially reduced. You never hear... Yeah, I know. The famine that I know of, in the case of China, is the one that involved sparrows. I don't remember the exact year. I have to say, China is not a country I've spent a lot of time studying. It's, that would actually be more in Latin America and in some parts of Europe, more than China. But, the famine that I know of is the one where somebody had the brilliant idea of killing all the sparrows in an effort to increase agricultural yields. They did, the intent was at the very least not not malicious, even if the idea sucked shit. I mean, and you look at, say, the DPRK famine, and if you know anything about the background there, what happened was that was once again things that looked like a good idea at the time in order to increase agricultural yields coming back to bite them. They deforested every hillside that looked like they could put it under the plow more or less successfully in order to get some decent agricultural land, because north of the 38th parallel is not where the good agricultural land on the Korean Peninsula is. So they raised all these forests, and then all of a sudden, you have these massive rainfalls in the 90s, in addition to losing their subsidized Soviet imports of like fertilizer and stuff and food, and suddenly having nobody to stop the US just sanctioning the shit out of them. And they have these mudslides, and it wrecks their crops. And they got completely wrecked by it. It was 1 to 2 million people got killed by it. But it wasn't it wasn't that somebody said, let's starve everybody, which is the way these things are always presented by guys like Dennis Prager. It was, how are we gonna get, like, he may very well be confusing those two things, actually. Yeah, that's entirely possible. Yelling at Joe Biden is a very important thing. That is part of why I could not continue going to university in Washington, D.C. The temptation was just too strong to stand in one of the Capitol metro stations and just wait for politicians to show up and just yell at them, because they're just all horrible fuckers. But, I mean, pretty much every single one of them, the worst of them, had at their base the belief that the people who came up with the policies were going to be improving agricultural yields, something that had been a problem. And each time it turned out their idea sucked, in ways that were not immediately predictable, in ways that were immediately predictable, sometimes in ways that were a little bit of both. But basically every one of these famines, you find that somebody had a bright idea about how to make agriculture work better, and it wasn't, and that isn't what happened. I mean, and in the DPRK, they have been learning lessons. They have a regular show on the TV there, where they talk about ideas to improve natural flood defenses. And one of the things that they have been strongly encouraging, there are questions about how much of it actually gets done, is planting fruit trees on the hillsides that were deforested. So you get agriculture and you get natural flood defenses both. I mean, NK News has had some stuff where they look at satellite imagery and they say they probably talk about it more than they actually do it. But as an idea, it's certainly not bad. Yeah, I had friends in Silver Spring. I actually spent a fair bit of time there when I was at uni there.
The suffering, and then the Cultural Revolution, and then what Stalin did to between 20 and 40 million people. That's just the ones killed, not the ones. We're not talking about the people incarcerated.
Okay, do Winston Churchill in Bengal. Do Victorian era Britain and Ireland, maybe.
I mean, how many young...
Yeah, do the U.S. and all the countries that are currently suffering because the U.S. is engaging in economic warfare against them and calling it sanctions, because that makes it sound like it has some kind of legal cover.
People ever heard of the Gulag Archipelago? How could you graduate high school, let alone college, and not know the Gulag or Auschwitz? That's obviously Nazi, but I mean, there are certain terms. I mean, to think that everyone at college...
Well, maybe those 36% who think communism sounds like it might be good also understand that actually that shit isn't communism. Maybe they got other ideas about the kind of communism they're into, and it isn't that. In fact, it would surprise me if it was that.
College knows what preferred pronoun means, but doesn't know what Auschwitz or Gulag is?
Well, I mean, that which is kind of funny because those are the sorts of places that the regimes that you claim to be opposing, although you seem to be kind of okay with a lot of what they did, at least when other people are doing it, sent people who had preferred pronouns to.
This is sick, folks. This is sick. This is morally and intellectually sick. Most colleges are worthless.
Wait, he's saying preferred pronouns are not an issue. Wow, I mean, how many videos has PragerU got where they get outraged about the fact that people have pronouns and want you to respect them?
I wish they were worthless. They're worse than worthless.
Well, yeah, exactly. I mean, you just count since 1991, you're already talking something like 1.5 million at least. And then, according to the Lancet study, which is the only one to actually use a rigorous method, by 2006, from the U.S. invasion to 2006, the U.S. had murdered 1.6 million Iraqis, and the war has continued in various forms since then. So, yeah, I mean, you start to pile that on, and then you've got, what, about 5 million people the U.S. murdered in Indochina, like, I think 3 or 4 million in the Korean Peninsula, um, easily a couple of million in Latin America just since World War II, although actually you need to start before that because the U.S. was already doing shit there. I mean, yeah, when you start, but of course we're not supposed to do that any more than we're supposed. I mean, that's why people. Nobody has any idea how many people the U.S. killed in Iraq during just the fucking current war. Even in the anti-war movie, you see these placards talking about how many Iraqis died, and it's like it's off by it's not even the right number of digits.
Worthless. When you know such nonsense.
Yes, exactly. I mean, if you start just from the founding of the country, not even starting from colonization, I mean, we are talking easily in the tens to hundreds of millions, and at which point it really becomes, and a lot of those, unlike a lot of these deaths that they're talking about, like that he's talking about, were definitely 100% intentional and openly acknowledged as such. The indigenous population wasn't decimated because the U.S. had bright ideas about agriculture that didn't work out. The U.S., the indigenous population in North America was decimated because the U.S. had bright ideas about murdering the indigenous population that did work out.
What is your preferred pronoun? I should do a talk on preferred pronouns.
No, you really shouldn't, Dennis. We don't need you to do that.
The preferred pronoun issue should not be an issue.
Then shut the fuck up about it.
I conduct orchestras periodically. I conducted an orchestra. Just allow me this tangent for a moment.
No.
I conducted this orchestra many years ago, and the timpanist, that's the person who plays the drums in an orchestra, was a woman. And I said to the conductor after the rehearsal, their regular conductor, I said, it's pretty rare to see a female timpanist. And he said, yes, but as it happens, this person is a transsexual. That's the way it was known and should be known. And I thought...
Wait, okay, a trans what, though? Was this a trans woman? Is this a non-binary person? Like, I really do not believe that the person he was talking to just said, this person is a transsexual. Because chances are there would have been some level of conflict over that particular kind of designation that would have resolved it in one of various ways already.
Big deal. And it meant nothing, and this is...
A timpanist is a homosexualist.
Way, way before anything that we talk about trans today.
Oh, okay. Then I can buy it. We're talking about okay. We're talking about back in the day. Then I can sort of buy it, but still, like a trans woman, a trans man, who?
Because for all intents and purposes, as far as I was concerned, this was a female. She looked like a female, talked like a female, had a female name, dressed like a female. Nobody cares. She didn't. If she were in a class in college, she wouldn't have to announce my preferred pronoun as she.
Okay, so she's a. Well, we don't even really know that though. Because at this point he has not talked to this person. He's heard a like very generic statement from somebody else about them. I mean, I would assume a trans woman, but at the same time, it's like, I mean, why do you
Everybody
give a
would have
shit?
said she. That's not an issue. It's the people who want to destroy male-female distinction.
How did we get onto this, by the way? Like, we were talking about tremendous communist suffering, and now he's decided to talk about how preferred pronouns are such a non-issue that he's got an entire section devoted to him being angry
That
about
have
it.
come up with the preferred pronoun thing. If you look like a woman, then you're a she. Okay. That's important. That's really important.
I thought you said it was a non-issue, Dennis. Oh, enforced ignorance. This is. Nah, I mean, that's like the entire. That's his business he's in. Okay, how long? We've got. Let's see. Enforced ignorance. Too much money given to Israel? Question mark. Romanticizing the LGBT lifestyle. Wow, that's some retro terminology right there. The LGBT. I didn't know that there was just one LGBT lifestyle. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I think you have a fair point there, Erica. So, shall we continue with this, or shall we seek greener pastures? Has everybody had enough of Dennis? Because I'm content to continue on, but if people want to see it, see. Okay, that actually sounds like a pretty nice lifestyle that you've described here. I wouldn't mind a bit of that. Don't know about the getting broken into. Oh, well, the carpet clean, that's neat. Okay, I'll go with that. So, shall we continue with Dennis, or shall we look for greener pastures? I saw in my YouTube recommendations, and I put it into my reaction fodder playlist. Keffels having a go at Soul Bunny. Yeah, Prager is best in small doses. This is why I think he understands that too, which is why he aims for the 5-minute mark on video length on PragerU. Okay, we've got Vosh. Vosh, the incel guy responded to me. It was not what I expected. We have whatever Vush thinks is good news for once. We have This is Dystopian by Xanderhole. We have Keffels calling Soul Bunny a liar. We have, this would be more complicated. Yeah, he really, there was no segue there either. It was like, okay, we're gonna talk about how I don't know which how the famines worked in China. And by the way, what about preferred pronouns. That's a non-issue that we could talk about for 10 minutes. How about that? And we have leaked recorded audio conversations between Augusto Pinochet and the junta that apparently were secretly recorded by General Lee, who was one of the members. That is going to be in Spanish. We have Kyle Kulinski. This is Bush again. Regrets not encouraging viewers to vote for Joe Biden. Why? I mean, if you consider Joe Biden getting elected a good result, it didn't turn out badly in that sense.
I feel like everybody's brain
Okay, here we go.
end up turning off because nobody is raining any.
See, the thing is, whatever the Keffel Soul Bunny beef is, I don't really know what it's about. I mean, I feel like maybe I might do better doing Xanderhole unless Phoenix, I mean, you seem to be much more familiar. You can fill me in on this shit. That would be cool. We can do it that way. Well,
In anymore. That it's all just.
if you can help me out there, Phoenix, because I think you know more about those involved than I do.
You can compare anybody to anyone and say whatever the f you want, and you know they pissed me off, so it's okay for me to f them over or whatever. And I don't know. I oppose that so strongly.
God, she's so right here, and I'm really sad knowing that this convo goes so south because Soul Bunny seems to agree, but then at a certain point gets incredibly defensive.
Okay, I remember this. I remember you telling me about this, actually.
Conversation that's not supposed to be a debate turns into a debate.
So what you're saying is a conversation in which people started out agreeing, it turned out on other things they didn't agree?
So the other day, Soul Bunny went on to Demon Mama's stream, and people got pretty heated over the fact that she was very obviously...
I've also never heard of Demon Mama. I'm guessing that was Demon Mama we were just looking at.
lying about quite a lot of the things that she was talking about. So that's what my conversation with Demon Mama was about the other night on stream, but I never actually watched it, and now I'm going to. See, I'm gonna move myself up here. There we go.
It's nice to know that streamers who are, like, have the money for a much better setup than I have also have to keep on fucking around with their crop all the time.
Welcome to the show, Soul Bunny. It's been a while since we last talked. I know you expressed in chat that you didn't really want to defend the whole video. I honestly, I felt pretty poorly about this video.
Oh yeah, I saw, and I said you have every right to have your opinion.
Okay, wait. I just saw someone said no RAF gameplay during this. Can we poll chat? Damn, people really like the RAF during reacts, huh? Alright. Okay.
The what?
You know, it's not just like people sometimes euphemize it as like, leftist infighting, but it honestly, it goes more than that. It's
Oh, my camera has crapped out, but actually in kind of a really cool freeze frame there with my hair blowing in the wind. That's less cool. I mean, unless I'm... There we go. Hello, I'm back.
It's the stuff that goes beyond. Like, infighting is going to happen. People have differing opinions on all kinds of topics, you know, even within like the same ideological quadrants or whatever, you know, like anarchists disagree with about all kinds of stuff. God knows the MLs can't agree with each other. They purge each other all the time. So it's normal to have a certain amount of infighting, and I think that that's like actually healthy when.
Okay, so we're framing this, it seems, as just leftist infighting. Phoenix, again, I'm going to be relying on you a bit on here. Would you call that an accurate description of what we're talking about?
When, you know, people have ideological differences, but I really think that sometimes this shit goes way too far. And not just that, but that a lot of stuff just gets... I have a huge problem with people, like, overstating harm. and I feel
Who
like that's
decides
something that
whether
happens
you're
all the
overstating
time,
harm,
especially
though?
with Keffals. Like, I get it. Like, people have a lot of reasons to like dislike Keffals, and that's one thing. But
on that note, chat, thank you so much for everyone's contribution in helping me to do pain at scale. Because we definitely did a lot of that today with all of the money that we helped distribute to people who needed it.
I feel like, I don't know, it's tiring. It's exhausting. It's exhausting to see.
I believe in the term as a thing that sometimes happens. I also tend to think that it is used in a lot of situations where that is definitely not what's happening. Fucking camera did it again. Yeah. I mean, and sometimes I've heard it called leftist infighting when leftists criticize the Democrats. It'll be like, yeah, I mean, I've heard that quite a bit. Leftists need to stop infighting. You need to stop like criticizing Joe Biden. And like, when did he become a fucking comrade?
When I see like people that I otherwise respect, or that I have some level of respect for, I respect the stuff that they do, engaging in like, I don't know, like putting blinders on, it seems, in order to like to find a reason to justify being really, really harsh to somebody when they could just say, I think X person is a fucking idiot. Like, I don't know. I guess I don't understand the need to turn so many struggles into like a political, not even a political struggle, that's not even right, but to like try and find like some sort of moral failing that has to go above and beyond and like speaks to somebody on like a deep level, instead of just being like, I think that Keffals is abrasive and inconsiderate, which I obviously have no problem with people saying something like that. Obviously, I don't care. I'm not like the
I would say, like, even for example, like I saw someone today, like people defending this black guy, saying he wishes death on Keffals, and they were defending it, and they were defending him because of how Keffals responded to that. And I'm like, that is not the hill I would die on. That's actually so cringe. It was so cringe to see that, because obviously, like, even like,
what's laughable is how often infighting is used to dismiss criticism of people who have no problem criticizing other leftists or vegans or activists, etc. Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, I agree. It is used in all sorts of ridiculous senses, and I have a feeling this is going to be an example of that. But, I mean, I think there is... I mean, you do have examples of where people are actually kind of disagreeing over very little. I mean, particularly sort of in the Trotskyist cinematic universe, where you have splits that nobody can even really remember exactly why the split happened, because it was basically trivial.
like obviously, like,
I mean, other times it's because there was a fucking sex pest in the Central Committee, and everybody who thought that was a bad idea got kicked out of the party, for example, in the Socialist Workers' Party in the UK. But other times...
like, even though I'm, you know, I'm pretty sure you saw something, but I am sort of involved in the current discourse.
I know there was a video you made, you know, about Shark, which, I mean, I don't know if you saw,
Calling death threats cringe is wild to me.
I saw your
probably
response,
did,
and I will say, and I'll say this. I did not. So I see why you and other folks would see it as like me using your clip as you endorsing that statement, but that's not what was like the goal, or even the way I intentionally did it. So I won't deny that I can see how it would come off that way for like other folks, but it was more like me showcasing that like you were calling out that behavior in the space, not necessarily. I personally just like was showing an example, like lining up your audio of calling it out, and I could see how like I'm saying, like, so it wasn't like me trying to like, well, Demon Mama is calling out Shark. No, because
this
you never
up,
gave
and
names.
this is 2 hours long.
That entire thing in that moment, like you just said that.
I know what I'm
talking about. His name, but I know what you're talking about.
But
yes. I know what.
But like that hurt my channel growth, because there was thousands, I mean, hundreds of thousands, arguably, of people who were told by a source of some sort that they had some trust in, that I was this, that, and the other thing, that I was harmful in this way, that I was dangerous. That was literally the thing that, some of the things that was said about me explicitly, was that I was dangerous, a harm, dangerous to the trans community was one of the things that was used. That was broadcast to hundreds of thousands of viewers, with what I would consider to be actually fraudulent evidence. So in these spaces of reputation, you can probably understand where, or at least I hope you can, understand why, like, making a comparison to someone as infamous and, in my opinion, very malignant as Candace Owens might do some serious damage, or if nothing else, let's say that the damage doesn't happen, at least cause a very genuine fear of reputational damage, right?
Yeah, but, I mean, surely the first question is, why are they getting compared to Candace Owens?
Well, yeah, of course. The thing is, like, I felt, so yeah, so that's like a given. That's like a given in this space. So, like, my goal was, because, like, for me, like I said, like, the tactics of Candace Owens is the way, like, he strategically had certain takes that, to me, as a Black person, came off very mask off. And my final straw was,
I'm honestly convinced that the reason why there is even a clique of video essayists who hate debate is because they are dog shit at actually supporting their positions. So they view anyone challenging their positions as a harassment campaign. Because she's just
well, the thing is that a lot of the time they just are. I mean, there's a certain circle of people on YouTube, you see, that view any harassment campaign as just challenging somebody's position with racist hate mobs.
Completely incoherent here. I don't know what she's trying to say. She's agreeing with Demon Mama that it was absolutely hyperbole to describe Shark as Candace Owens.
Well, no, she wasn't, though. She was saying she had a very specific comparison she was making. Namely, that Shark, she was saying, uses similar rhetorical tactics to Candace Owens.
And that it does do reputational harm. But then she's also saying, yeah, but actually it's true because I say so.
Well, yeah, okay.
Oh.
No, she said it's true because he does similar things. She didn't say because I say so.
It's the Cat Black situation.
Sure.
And I want to say this. No one has to agree with me. That's where I'm at. Like, I'm not... Like, I know how I feel as a Black person is where I'm at. And where I feel crossed. And that's what I spoke on.
Mm-hmm.
And when I saw his response video, it kind of further confirmed how I feel. For different reasons this time, though. For certain things that were said that I wouldn't move that way. So... yeah, that's basically where I stand. Because, like, if I felt like something that I couldn't stand on, I wouldn't put it in a video. That's how I personally feel. So, because I don't just throw things out there lightly, because it's not a joke.
I guess all I'm saying is, like, when I think of Candace Owens, like, I mean, Candace Owens is...
I remember I said tactics.
Yeah, like, but even tactics. And let's just say on the tactics of Candace Owens. When I think of the tactics of Candace Owens, I mean, Candace Owens is she helped found a right-wing propaganda outlet known as
What tactics? Explain the tactics.
Well, she did explain the tactics. She already said that it was about using certain takes specifically in order to influence the discourse.
She mumbled something about Cat Black, but she never actually explained the situation.
Yes, she did.
This is reminding me of the foreign video. It's reminding me of all of her videos. All of these incredibly vague accusations that never actually get backed up.
Well, except she did give some specifics.
With any sort of evidence or elaborated on.
She did elaborate on
Wire, it. You know, and where she has sort of assembled a crew and uses her own identity as a shield for people like Michael Knowles and Matt Walsh. You know, these like...
Oh, yeah, I saw
and that's not even to say,
like some people use their own identity as a shield for Bush or Caleb Muppet.
own arguments. And when I look at her tactics, like, I mean,
to be fair, White House cats have better reasons to attack. I can understand a White House cat attacking.
Outright manipulation. She has like stomped down other creators, on a great level. Like, I mean, down to the degree of like, it doesn't matter. She doesn't care about what their race is. She doesn't give a shit. She will just choke out anybody, and use basically any tactic to be able to do that. I feel like that, like, even if you say the tactics of Candace Owens, the tactics of Candace Owens
point out like which tactic that I'm referring to. So like the tactics, like,
well, here she goes.
Some of the things that Candace Owens saying, she knows is bullshit.
Well, sure, but I mean, but there's lots of people who do that who aren't Candace Owens, right?
Wait a second. Is the tactic?
Well, it seems like she's gotten interrupted here, so maybe it would be more enlightening if you were to just kind of wait.
That Candace Owens lies? Is she literally saying that the tactic is lying?
Well, maybe if you continued listening, we'd know. I mean, certainly lying seems to have been part of it.
That's crazy. Okay, I don't feel like I did hyperbole before now by comparing her to Adolf Hitler because she talks. Because this is actually her
Well, you didn't let her finish, though. Maybe you'd let her finish before you do
logic
this?
Right now with comparing Shark to Candace Owens.
Fuck off.
She's also she uses Candace Owens tactics herself in this by lying, because that's apparently specifically a Candace Owens tactic.
Again, like, she paused this when she was clearly being interrupted in the middle of a sentence. And, I mean, fuck
Candace
off.
Owens, for example, because Candace is not a new phenomenon, but she is the most successful. She is the most successful. So, she's taking the whole paid Black Republican route, where you know what they want to hear, you know how to like brand yourself and to get into certain spaces by strategically making decisions whether you believe in it or not.
Yeah.
So, where it comes for me is I feel when it came to two specific situations.
Wow, so it turns out, Keffels, if you'd waited, she would have elaborated on this. It wasn't just that she was saying that the tactic was lying.
And I'm purposely not saying the names because you can see folks can see the video, and I don't want to like relitigate those people that I use.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm not super interested in like drilling down on every issue you have. I mean, I guess what I'm trying to say is like, you see
where I'm coming from too, though. Like, why?
I mean, to a certain degree, like I do understand where you're coming from. Like, I mean, God knows, like there are things. I mean, I can use a very specific example. There are rhetorical tactics and arguments that Vosh uses and positions that Vosh holds that drive me fucking batty.
Okay, this could be good.
I know you're the one person that would like actually like as a friend that you've never felt like you couldn't have a criticism of them. Hence, like the video I used your clip from because but I only stuck to where I felt was the only point I was trying to make.
Yeah. So I mean, I guess
that's why I didn't include all the other stuff because that was just like.
Yeah, this conversation is actually beginning to annoy me because nobody is. It's like people will start to say. It's like the fucking PragerU video we just finished watching. They start to say something, and then they think of something else. Admittedly, this is kind of how I talk sometimes. But it's like
I don't want other people speaking for me.
I guess all I'm trying to say is like even with the stuff that drives me and again my history having like at great personal cost, let's just say the times that I've disagreed with Vosh, I have lost subscribers. In fact, one of the biggest loss of subscribers ever happened with my last public debate with Vosh. I lost 1,000 subscribers in the course of like 2 days. It severely damaged my channel. My channel was not very big at the time. That was devastating. And I still published the video. I still put the video up. I still, stood by that.
Good. Fuck him.
Even though it made his fans, a lot of his fans very angry at me.
That's kind of the natural state of his fans, though. That's why they go to Vosh. They want to have somebody that they can go take their anger out on.
But even still, like, I can't imagine comparing Vosh to, like, I don't know, Ben Shapiro or
I have
Matt
no trouble
Walsh.
comparing him to Ben Shapiro. He uses a lot of Ben Shapiro's fucking terminology in order to kick left. I have absolutely no trouble. In fact, his arguments in favor of colonialism are arguments I'm pretty sure Ben Shapiro would be cool with. He embraces the idea of white genocide. I'm pretty sure, I don't know if Ben Shapiro has done that quite as explicitly, but yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if he had, I just don't know. So yeah, no problem comparing him to Ben Shapiro. He's a racist asshole, and he's full of shit, just like Ben Shapiro, and they both have, their entire tactic is they talk fast, and they hope they're talking so fast that nobody notices they don't know anything.
Or something, just because even if he has, like, an argument that I think that, like, a tactic that, like, is borrowed from those people, the comparison to such a major figure is so, it's so severe.
Who gives a shit? I mean, the question is whether it's a valid comparison. I mean, and of course, and when you say, so it's not that it's severe or it's not severe. That strikes me as a little bit cowardly. I don't know anything about Demon Mama. I don't want to, like, I'm not trying to cast aspersions there, but it seems like if the comparison is valid on its own terms, then it's a fucking valid comparison. And the problem is that Vush did things that make him comparable to an asshole like Ben Shapiro, as opposed to just being an asshole like Vush.
I was complaining about this earlier with Jessie Gender. Jessie Gender, I've actually seen her compare trans people criticizing her to Ben Shapiro. Or, like, when I was trying to get her...
Was the comparison valid, though?
To be accountable for her part in the foreign video, she was writing Twitter threads where she started comparing me to Elon Musk. It's really weird how they keep invoking these huge figures that can do actual institutional harm, and then...
Yeah, but the thing is, so you think that there are magic words that do institutional harm to you? That's how that works. See, I thought you had to have some institutional power for that to work. Like, I mean, I've said, and I will stand by it, that Vush has embraced white nationalist talking points and has supported Nazi propaganda, has openly embraced it. That hasn't done him any harm, because, like, other than you, chat, and some people on Twitter, basically nobody's fucking heard of me.
I can't, I don't understand.
The magic words don't make any fucking difference, because most people will not actually even get this video recommended to.
It's just manipulative. It's so fucking manipulative. And I'm just kind of shocked that there is an audience that falls for this.
But you haven't said that it's wrong.
And so, like, hyperbolic that it comes with implications that you can't control. Like, even if you were being spicy or whatever.
And to be clear, I'm not being spicy when I say that Vush uses terminology and fucking Zanderhold uses terminology that I've only heard elsewhere from fucking Ben Shapiro, that I've only ever heard Ben Shapiro use unironically, like woke scold.
Which, you know, people fucking talk mad shit.
Candace was an example as, like, an archetype, is what's the point. So it wasn't that I was trying to say he's using the tactics of a right-winger. That's not was ever what
Why?
And I can get how.
Why would you specifically invoke Candace Owens if the
Maybe because she thought the comparison was apt.
Tactic is just lying.
Yeah, it was pretty clear the tactic wasn't just lying. They just ended up trailing off and shifting to another topic of discussion.
You know what you were doing. And yeah, the archetype is the C-slur. Like, Soul Bunny was invoking Jim Crow era stereotypes when talking about Shark, specifically. There was a reason that it was Candace Owens. And the whole thing is just fucking gross.
But Candace Owens, I don't think, was even alive in the Jim Crow era, so clearly what we're talking about is not actually limited to the Jim Crow era. To the extent that we can, or I mean, of course, there is a school of thought that quite reasonably says that in some ways, the Jim Crow era has never left us.
But you gotta admit, Candace Owens is a pretty spicy archetype to pick. Like, especially,
it's specifically a black archetype, but I'm pointing out that black people are well aware of within our community. But Candace Owens is the one example that people in politics is well aware of that utilize these specific tactics as a black person. So
I mean,
again, like that segment was meant for black folks. It wasn't really like, that was me speaking as a black person on how I genuinely feel and where I stand. But also, like I said, when I go back to the response video, like there's a conflation.
I just feel like biting into a crunchy Ritz right now. Oh, well, because they've decided that they just should have a say in everything they feel like getting clicks by having a say in.
He did with the C word. And again, I'm mixed.
No, it's just stupid. You're not making a video specifically for the black community if it's a public video.
No, that's not how that works. Like, just because you put it on YouTube doesn't mean that it isn't intended for a specific audience.
On YouTube. And
okay, so where are you allowed to upload videos that are primarily intended to be viewed by the black community? What, speaking of Jim Crow, what's the platform that, black people are allowed to upload content that is specifically for other black people to? Keffels.
Just like with her call-out video to me, she is specifically calling out these creators, me, Vosh, Shark, hoping for a response. Like, you can't just claim that, oh no, this was just like a private little video for my friends. It wasn't.
She didn't say that. She said for the black community. You think you think she's friends with everybody in the black community? You think that's how that works, Keffels?
It's supposed to be this big deal, especially when she's obviously lying, as her intent was to piss people off.
Well, maybe the intent was to express her own pissed offedness.
Afro-Latina, my dad's Hispanic, mestizo, my mom's black. So he conflated C word because it's a conflation two N words, one in English, one meant for one black woman, and one N word in Spanish. And that I took very personal because it's...
Yeah, no, Gayfesh makes a great point. Like, if that video was supposed to be for black people, why did she host it on Bad Bunny's stream? That doesn't make any sense.
Why do you... Maybe because she expected black people to watch it there? Like, okay. I mean, I'm making this... Okay, so by this logic, I'm making this stream... It's mostly for people who are already some kind of communoids, but not exclusively. People who are kind of inclined and are curious, commo curious. So is Keffel saying I shouldn't be uploading this to YouTube? Is there some other platform I ought to be putting it on so that it is, ring-fenced away? Because the idea is that if you have a video that is specifically for a particular marginalized community, then it is your responsibility to make sure that non-marginalized people and their delicate-ass fucking sensibilities, or people who don't share that marginalization, I should say, and their delicate-ass fucking sensibilities don't see it? Like, what's the end game here?
Those are the C word, the usage of the C word, and those N words have two completely purposes, usage, and meanings that are not equivalent at all. And I can get why he felt the way he... So let me put it this way. I can get why at that point, especially when he, filmed it, and, he had went through.
Wait, Kevel, she knew it was going to be big in communities, even she considered white. Why would she have a for the black community only segment in such a video without declaring it?
When did we have this rule that now you have to declare the things? Like, maybe sometimes people will talk about things, and the people it's very clearly intended for, because they understand more about what's being said than most people do. They understand the references that are being made. They just know that it's mostly primarily for them. Like, seriously. Since when do you have to put a fucking warning label on it?
What's this? Oh yeah, we already went over this. Yeah.
People that I already felt that escalated the situation that I wouldn't co-sign, that I was getting blamed for, as if like I had them like my goons, like a mafia leader, to go like sick my pit bulls on.
Well, I'm not trying to say anything about being
I'm not saying you
leader.
are,
I'm just
but
trying to say like
I'm not saying
your
you
video
are, but
has had a lot of
movement.
reach, and like, so there's a couple things here. Like, your video ended up having a lot of reach, which is always something a video can do, even intentional or not.
I mean, yeah, it's apparently something a video can do. Mine haven't really done that. My videos apparently don't like having reach.
That's definitely something that a video can go well beyond your. I
had lost control of what that was doing. Like, I didn't expect the clip to even like explode so fast, like within the same day of it being uploaded. So
yeah.
It like blew up. Like, and again, like this, it would have never blown up to the degree that it did if that clip didn't circulate, because as we all know, whether you like or not, you like a video or dislike it, like that pushes it.
She got FD Signifier, 500,000 sub YouTuber to promote it. She got Jesse Gender, 250,000 sub YouTuber to promote it. Like, this video actually, it had enough people promoting it. You can't just blame it.
Well, okay, so people promoted it. Like, yeah, I mean, you're trying to make this out to be a conspiracy now.
On the one clip. Especially when those are things you said with your own words.
That doesn't mean that you expected it to go that viral. I mean, I've said, like, if you look at the tweets that I've had that on my Twitter account that have actually managed likes in the 3 and 4 figures, they are literally never things that I would have expected to get anywhere near that kind of response. It's always a shock.
If you argue,
sure, but
Yeah,
also,
so
like,
exactly, Phoenix. So what? So she had some reach.
Admit, like that.
She's not responsible for your fucking delicate sensibilities, Keffels.
That clip was almost like designed. Like, that's an eye catcher. That's a zinger, right?
That was like a very candid moment.
But that's real. Even you can acknowledge it was harsh, right? Like, it was really harsh, right? Like, you were slamming him pretty hard, and that's definitely going to get some eyes, right?
With myself, and it wasn't about getting eyes. It was just me standing on
Good,
how
do
I
it.
felt. And because again, the video is a purging. That video was designed as the end of me ever discussing in any video format about, like, even like on my YouTube, on my content, I mean, like, about that was like me.
Keffels looks like she's smelling shit. She's not saying anything, she's just like wrinkling her nose.
That's just not even true.
How the fuck would you
Like,
know?
that's not true at all.
And even...
She's literally saying she can't be held accountable for her own actions
No, she isn't.
because she's upset.
No, she isn't.
Well, I want to go back a little bit.
And because I was contemplating, do I even include that part? Because I know that in my content, I don't even, like, I usually have this ASMR approach, and I usually don't like break character and like have like a very like super stern tone.
What does she mean by breaking character? what character is she playing exactly?
Well, she said something about ASMR, so I'm guessing like the ASMR voice.
I think that should be a huge red flag
What, that she does ASMR or that she sometimes doesn't?
to anyone that thinks that she's being honest or sincere. And this is literally
What, that she, I mean, why? She does ASMR and she didn't this time.
the Alex Jones legal defense
No, it
for
isn't.
calling the victims of Sandy Hook's crisis actors.
No, it literally is not that thing. I don't remember Alex Jones saying, "Yeah, normally I do the ASMR, but that time I wasn't doing the ASMR, I was breaking character." I don't remember that bit from Alex Jones. Also, an Alex Jones ASMR would be like listening to somebody scrape a blackboard with one of those like meat hammers.
So it wasn't already like really with the way I was like designing my channel, the way to be like kind of like this art ASMR approach to me discussing how I personally, my perspectives on.
So what she means by breaking character, here we go again. That she tries to do it with a soothing ASMR kind of voice. That's what she's talking about.
And racism, etc., whatnot.
That's fair. But
So
I
yeah.
guess what I'm trying to say is like the video to me, like, just going to be 100% real. You had Keffels, Vosh, Shark. I think that was all three. Let me see. Maybe in the thumbnail.
And Merrick.
And Merrick.
yeah,
so
fucker too.
you know, a lot of people who let's just say are hot
Liberal
buttons on
bullshit
Twitter
artists.
specifically. It seems to me like, if we're being honest here, like you were
It's good when you find the spunk that you used to have. I mean, depending on which definition of that term we're using, sometimes you would have hoped it was washed out.
definitely trying to reach outside of your circle with that one. I feel like you gotta be honest about that, right? Like if you're putting the face of like 4 controversial people on the cover of a video, like that's what we call in the business, you know, you're making a thumbnail, you're making a catchy thumbnail.
It's literally called a thumbnail. What's your fucking point?
Arguably even clickbait. Like that's. Like,
I wouldn't say clickbait, but I know that
That's
it
not
would
how
definitely
clickbait works.
potentially reach.
But you're reaching for an audience still, right? Like I can admit that I.
Well, no, maybe the idea is that she's trying to explain. She's trying to make a clickbait. Thumbnail art that gives people an idea what the video is going to be about.
Do that in all my videos. Like
We'll
all
say
of my
this,
videos.
like,
I'm an entertainer, so
Yeah,
know.
but I'll say this: like I thought when they would have seen it, it'd have been like 3 months later because of how small my channel was. I had no idea it would ever do anything. I thought it'd never get anywhere to Twitter discourse. Like
Jesse Gender was literally promoting this video.
That doesn't mean that she expected that to happen. I mean, like, I occasionally try to get people with a lot of reach to promote my stuff. Some of them do it. I mean, like, Casey Explosion has been absolutely lovely with promoting my language stream, which, I mean, of course, fair dues, I make extensive use of her Steam curator page for the games that I play on there, because she just picks the most amazing games. But even when somebody who has some reach promotes you on Twitter or some other platform, that doesn't mean that it actually goes anywhere. Like, I mean, I've had people retweet my stuff who have, you know, like 10,000, 20,000 followers sometimes, and I'll still only get like maybe 1 or 2. I'll only get like 1 or 2 likes on it and maybe an extra retweet and very little engagement with whatever it is that I was sharing. I mean, there's really no way to just know this. I mean,
on Twitter. At the same time, she was tweeting shit like, my next video will be about Vosh.
So what? So she announced, are you not supposed to announce in advance what your next video is going to be about?
How can she pretend that she didn't see that this was going to happen?
Because it's not that predictable.
And honestly, I think that Jesse and FD are really gross for using a small content creator as their sacrificial lamb.
Wait, okay. So what are you in this analogy? If Soul Bunny is the sacrificial lamb who's being used, who's doing the sacrificing on whose altar? It's Keffels. Because it seems to me that maybe you're the one doing the sacrificing?
Who gets to take all of, like, takes the brunt of the people who are mad about this because they are too cowardly.
Wait, okay, so what the fuck? Is she some sort of fucking Machiavellian conspirator? Because two creators with significantly greater reach than she had promoted her video? Or is she a victim, a sacrificial lamb of the evil FD signifier and Jesse gender, because they promoted it? Like, you can't have it both ways. Which one is it?
To do with themselves.
That's because, again, like,
what it was all mostly pertaining to Twitter discourse, right? So
let me see.
Most of the topics on there were tied to Twitter discourse in some way or another.
Some parts was tied to stuff. There was still, like, YouTube segments. There was at least a handful of YouTube stuff. So there was probably 60% of Twitter and 40% YouTube.
I mean, she's like, she can't seem to find any way. She's just not willing to consider the possibility that maybe Soul Bunny made this video because she was sick of all those people's shit. And that other people, including people with reach, shared it because they liked the video and thought other people should see it. And that actually it is not all that easy to predict what stuff is really going to explode on social media, because social media's ways are quite inscrutable. And we're not really allowed to even know the inner workings of the algorithm. I mean, why does it have to be a conspiracy one way or another? Why? I mean, it seems like Keffels is having trouble actually responding to the substance of the thing. Now, admittedly, this conversation is being done in an annoying way where it seems like there isn't a whole lot of focus. You may be too old for certain YouTubers, definitely. Okay, I just noticed the time, and it is time for me to start wrapping up. Thank you to everyone who joined. Always good to see you. Somehow my viewer numbers always go up in the last 2 minutes of my video, which is neat. Don't understand that exactly. But in any case, I will be back tomorrow at 11:30 p.m. U.S. Eastern Time, and we will be having a look at who gets to deliver the keynote address at the Last JabroniCon. If you enjoy the stream, please consider paying for the stream and signal boosting my crowdfunded translation project, which you can find information about on Patreon. If you do the Patreon command in chat, you will get the address. I'm working on a crowdfunded basis the very first full-length English translation of Alexandra Kollontais' Social Basis of the Female Question, and I'm putting that all up on my Patreon. The first two sections, the intro and chapter 1, are already up there as PDFs on the Patreon for anyone who wants to check it out. They're drafts, and I'm going to be going over everything later on to just put all the finishing touches on it. Right now I am nearly halfway through translating chapter 2 and $350 short of fully funding the translation of chapter 2. So anyone who wants to make any kind of contribution in that regard, including signal boosting, is very, very much appreciated. And with that, I will see you tomorrow. Have a good night, Phoenix and Erica and everybody else who is watching, and I hope to see you tomorrow.